For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway, Chapter 32. On that same night in Madrid, there were many people at the Hotel Gaylord. A car pulled up under the porte cochere of the hotel, its headlights painted over with blue calcimine, and a little man in black riding boots, grey riding breeches, and a short, grey, high-buttoned jacket stepped out and returned the salute of the two sentries as he opened the door, nodded to the secret policeman who sat at the concierge's desk, and stepped into the elevator. There were two sentries seated on chairs inside the door, one on each side of the marble entrance hall, and these only looked up as the little man passed them at the door of the elevator. It was their business to feel everyone they did not know along the flanks, under the armpits, and over the hip pockets, to see if the person entering carried a pistol, and if he did, have him check it with the concierge. But they knew the short man in riding boots very well, and they hardly looked up as he passed. The apartment where he lived in Gaylord's was crowded as he entered. People were sitting and standing about and talking together as in any drawing room, and the men and the women were drinking vodka, whiskey and soda, and beer from small glasses filled from great pitchers. 4 of the men were in uniform, the others wore windbreakers or leather jackets, and 3 of the 4 women were dressed in ordinary street dresses, while the 4th, who was haggardly thin and dark, wore a sort of severely cut militia woman's uniform, with a skirt with high boots under it. When he came into the room, Karkov went at once to the woman in the uniform and bowed to her and shook hands. She was his wife, and he said something to her in Russian that no one could hear, and for a moment the insolence that had been in his eyes as he entered the room was gone. Then it lighted again as he saw the mahogany-colored head and the love-lazy face of the well-constructed girl who was his mistress, and he strode with short, precise steps over to her, and bowed, and shook her hand in such a way that no one could tell it was not a mimicry of his greeting to his wife. His wife had not looked after him as he walked across the room. She was standing with a tall, good-looking Spanish officer, and they were talking Russian now. "Your great love is getting a little fat," Karkov was saying to the girl. "All of our heroes are fattening now as we approach the 2nd year." He did not look at the man he was speaking of. "You are so ugly you would be jealous of a toad," the girl told him cheerfully. She spoke in German. "Can I go with thee to the offensive tomorrow?" "No, nor is there one." "Everyone knows about it," the girl said. "Don't be so mysterious. Dolores is going. I will go with her, or Carmen. Many people are going." "Go with whoever will take you," Karkov said. "I will not." Then he turned to the girl and asked seriously, "Who told thee of it? Be exact." "Richard," she said as seriously. Karkov shrugged his shoulders and left her standing. "Karkov!" A man of middle height with a grey, heavy, sagging face, puffed eye pouches, and a pendulous underlip, called to him in a dyspeptic voice. "Have you heard the good news?" Karkov went over to him, and the man said, "I only have it now, not 10 minutes ago. It is wonderful. All day the fascists have been fighting among themselves near Segovia. They have been forced to quell the mutinies with automatic rifle and machine gun fire. In the afternoon, they were bombing their own troops with planes." "Yes?" asked Karkov. "That is true," the puffy-eyed man said. "Dolores brought the news herself. She was here with the news and was in such a state of radiant exultation as I've never seen. The truth of the news shone from her face." "That great face," he said happily. "That great face," Karkov said with no tone in his voice at all. "If you could have heard her," the puffy-eyed man said. "The news itself shone from her with a light that was not of this world. In her voice, you could tell the truth of what she said. I am putting it in an article for the Izvestia. It's one of the greatest moments of the war to me, when I heard the report in that great voice where pity, compassion, and truth are blended. Goodness and truth shined from her as from a true saint of the people. Not for nothing is she called La Pasionera. Not for nothing, Karkov said in a dull voice. You better write it for the Izvestia now, before you forget that last beautiful lead. That is a woman that is not to joke about, not even by a cynic like you, the puffy-eyed man said. If you could have been here to hear her and to see her face. That great voice, Karkov said, that great face, write it. He said, Don't tell it to me. Don't waste whole paragraphs on me. Go and write it now. Not just now. I think you'd better, Karkov said and looked at him, and then looked away. The puffy-eyed man stood there a couple of minutes more holding his glass of vodka, his eyes, puffy as they were, absorbed in the beauty of what he had seen and heard, and then he left the room to write it. Karkov went over to another man of about 48, who was short, chunky, jovial-looking, with pale blue eyes, thinning blonde hair, and a gay mouth under a bristly yellow mustache. This man was in uniform. He was a divisional commander, and he was a Hungarian. Were you here when the Dolores was here? Karkov asked the man. Yes. What was the stuff? Something about the fascists fighting among themselves. Beautiful if true. You hear much talk of tomorrow? Scandalous. All the journalists should be shot, as well as most of the people in this room, and certainly the intriguing German, unmentionable of a Richard. Whoever gave that Sunday Fugler command of a brigade should be shot. Perhaps you and me should be shot too. It is possible. The general laughed. Don't suggest it, though. That is a thing I never like to talk about, Karkov said. That American who comes here sometimes is over there. You know the one, Jordan, who's with the Partisan group. He is there with this business they spoke of is supposed to happen. Well, he should have a report through on it tonight, then, the general said. They don't like me down there, or I'd go and find out for you. He works with Goltz on this, doesn't he? You'll see Goltz tomorrow. Early tomorrow. Keep out of his way until it's going well, the general said. He hates you bastards as much as I do, though. He has a much better temper. But about this? It was probably the fascists having maneuvers. The general grinned. Well, we'll see if Goltz can maneuver them a little. Let Goltz try his hand at it. We maneuvered them at Guadalajara. I hear you are traveling too, Karkov said, showing his bad teeth as he smiled. The general was suddenly angry. And me too. Now is the mouth on me, and on all of us, always. This filthy sewing circle of gossip. One man who could keep his mouth shut could save the country if he believed he could. Your friend Prieto can keep his mouth shut. But he doesn't believe he can win. How can you win without belief in the people? You decide that, Karkov said. I am going to get a little sleep. He left the smoky, gossip-filled room and went back into the back bedroom and sat down on the bed and pulled his boots off. He could still hear them talking, so he shut the door and opened the window. He did not bother to undress because at 2 o'clock he would be starting for the drive by Colmenar Cerceda and Navacerrada up to the front, where Goltz would be attacking in the morning. Chapter 33. It was 2 o'clock in the morning when Pilar waked him. As her hand touched him, he thought at first it was Maria, and he rolled toward her and said, Rabbit? Then the big woman's hand shook his shoulder, and he was suddenly completely and absolutely awake, and his hand was around the butt of his pistol that lay alongside of his bare right leg. and all of him was as cocked as the pistol with its safety catch slipped off. In the dark, he saw it was Pilar, and he looked at the dial of his wristwatch with the two hands shining in the short angle close to the top, and seeing it was only 2, he said, "What passes with thee, woman?" "Pablo is gone," the big woman said to him. Robert Jordan put on his trousers and shoes. Maria had not waked. "When?" he asked. "It must be an hour." "And?" "He has taken something of thine," the woman said miserably. "So? What?" "I do not know," she told him. "Come and see." In the dark, they walked over to the entrance of the cave, ducked under the blanket, and went in. Robert Jordan followed her in the dead ashes, bad air, and sleeping men's smell of the cave, shining his electric torch so that he would not step on any of those who were sleeping on the floor. Anselmo woke and said, "Is it time?" "No," Robert Jordan whispered. "Sleep, old one." The 2 sacks were at the head of Pilar's bed, which was screened off with a hanging blanket from the rest of the cave. The bed smelled stale and sweat-dried and sickly sweet the way an Indian's bed does, as Robert Jordan knelt on it and shone the torch on the 2 sacks. There was a long slit from top to bottom in each one. Holding the torch in his hand, Robert Jordan felt the first sack with his right hand. This was the one that he had carried his robe in, and it should not be very full. It was not very full. There was some wire in it still, but the square wooden box of the exploder was gone. So was the cigar box with the carefully wrapped and packed detonators. So was the screw-top tin with the fuse and the caps. Robert Jordan felt in the other sack. It was still full of explosive. There might be 1 packet missing. He stood up and turned to the woman. There's a hollow, empty feeling that a man can have when he is waked too early in the morning that is almost like the feeling of disaster, and he had this multiplied by 1,000 times. "This is what you call guarding one's materials," he said. "I slept with my head against them and one arm touching them," Pilar told him. "You slept well." "Listen," the woman said. "He got up in the night and I said, 'Where do you go, Pablo?' 'To urinate, woman,' he told me, and I slept again. When I woke again, I did not know what time had passed, but I thought when he was not there that he had gone down to look at the horses as was his custom. Then," she finished miserably, "when he did not come, I worried, and when I worried, I felt of the sacks to be sure was well, and there were the slit places, and I came to thee." "Come on," Robert Jordan said. They were outside now, and it was still so near the middle of the night that you could not feel the morning coming. "Can he get out with the horses other ways than by the sentry?" "2 ways." "Who's at the top?" "Eladio." Robert Jordan said nothing more until they reached the meadow where the horses were staked out to feed. There were 3 horses feeding in the meadow. The big bay and the gray were gone. "How long ago do you think it was he left you?" "It must have been an hour." "Then that is that," Robert Jordan said. "I go to get what is left of my sacks and go back to bed." "I will guard them." "Que va? You will guard them. You've guarded them once already." "Inglés," the woman said. "I feel in regard to this as you do. There is nothing I will not do to bring back thy property. You have no need to hurt me. We have both been betrayed by Pablo." As she said this, Robert Jordan realized that he could not afford the luxury of being bitter, that he could not quarrel with this woman. He had to work with this woman on that day that was already 2 hours and more gone. He put his hand on her shoulder. "It is nothing, Pilar," he told her. "What is gone is of small importance. We shall improvise something that will do as well." "But what did he take?" Nothing, woman. Some luxuries that one permits oneself. Was it part of the mechanism for the exploding? Yes, but there are other ways to do the exploding. Tell me, did Pablo not have caps and fuse? Surely they would have equipped him with those. He has taken them, she said miserably. I looked at once for them. They are gone too. They walked back through the woods to the entrance of the cave. Get some sleep, he said. We are better off with Pablo gone. I go to see Eladio. He will have gone another way. I go anyway. I have betrayed it with my lack of smartness. Nay, he said, get some sleep, woman. We must be underway at 4. He went into the cave with her and brought out the 2 sacks, carrying them held together in both arms, so that nothing could spill from the slits. Let me sew them up. Before we start, he said softly, I take them not against you, but so that I can sleep. I must have them early to sew them. You shall have them early, he told her. Get some sleep, woman. Nay, she said. I have failed the Republic. Get thee some sleep, woman, he told her gently. Get thee some sleep.